All right, so we've got a smart contract. We got this shell. We have a total supply. We've got a name, symbol. Amazing. It's got 1,000,000 tokens. That's so awesome. But hold on. What can we actually do with this smart contract? What can people do with this contract? And unfortunately, right now, the answer is not a whole lot. In fact, you can't really do anything with this because there is no functionality written for it yet, right? All we have so far just some static. We've got some variables here, some strings, which are set. And so there's information, and we've taken that information and put it up on the blockchain. We have not provided any real functionality. So we want to be able to add some basic functionality for our tether. We want people to be able to transfer it, right? We want people to be able to send tether to other people, receive tether, and we also want to be able to, and we also want to do this in a secure fashion by making sure that people approve these transactions. So these are some two very fundamental, important functionality that we're going to now together code in for our tether contract. And we do this in Solidity, explicitly as always by setting up events and then explicitly stating these events and then setting them to some functions in which we can customize the functionality of these events. And what do I mean by events? Well, I'm going to show you now. So we're going to have two events. Can you guess the names? Well, the two things we were talking about, of course, was the event for transfer. So we're going to have a function transfer, and we're going to set it as an event so that we can emit it in our functions. And then we're going to have another event as well, which will be to approve these transfers. Okay. All right. And let's add some semicolons for Solidity. Now, what's the key information we want to add in our transfer here? What do you think it could be? Well, we want address, right? And that address has to be from somebody. We want another address, which will be to somebody. We also want to have a uint, which will be value, essentially. So we're going to have our integer as a value. So we're going to put, I'm going to add. And these addresses are going to be indexed. And if you don't, well, when we add indexed, essentially this allows us to filter through the addresses so that we can search for them. So we get this parameter where we can index like that. And what do you think? Okay. And so now that we've created our transfer parameters, what do you think we should be putting in for our approval? Well, it would be very similar, right? We're going to need addresses. We're going to need addresses and a value. The only difference here is that we're going to change from to the owner, right? Because the approval will always be from the owner to a spender, right? Because approval always has to come from the owner. We can be transferring from wherever, but approval has to come from the owner. Okay, and now we're going to use some mapping in order to keep track of the balance for when we're transferring, when we're updating. It's very important to have that. And so we're going to go with mapping over here. We're going to write address, public, and we're going to define balance of. All right, and now we can create a constructor. So we have our special constructor function. And Solidity, let's add our semicolon over here. And what are we going to add into our constructor? Well, we're going to put in the balance of. The balance of what? Well, the balance of the person currently with the contract, so message.sender, if you remember. And what are we going to set this equal to? So what should the balance be, right? What should the balance be set to? Well, we need to set this to our total supply. And if you got that right, that's awesome. So you understand that that is basically our supply of how many tokens that we have in our tether. And by doing that, we are able to do transfers and approve, to do transfers to and from, and keep track of the balance in our contract. And if you didn't really understand that so far, don't worry. Once we have the full functionality of this contract written out, we're going to run some more tests on the Truffle console, and I'm going to show you how we can access the balance together. Okay, so let's create our transfer function. Now that we have our event set up and we have our balance of map ready to go, and as well we've set our balance to the total supply, let's write out the actual logic for this function transfer. So we're going to create a function here called transfer. And it's going to take two arguments, 2 and value. And what do you and what type of arguments do you think these are? Well, 2, that is going to be a address, right? And value, if it's a value, then it's likely a integer, right? Unit of measurement. So we have our uint, and we're going to make it public. We're going to create a bool, create a public returns. We're going to do bool success. Bool success. Oops, not return, returns. Bool success. Okay. And we're going to write balance of message.sender equals the balance of message.sender minus the value. And actually a better way to write that would just be minus equals the value. Okay, and what does this mean? Well, basically whatever the balance is from the message sender, whatever our balance is going to be that same balance when we make a transfer minus the value, the amount we're transferring, which makes sense, right? When we make transfers, when our customer makes a transfer, or whenever anyone is making a transfer from this token, we don't want to be adding to the token. We want to be subtracting that amount, right? And that amount is the amount that you have minus the amount that you want to transfer. Okay. So now that we see the logic for taking out from our balance, what about adding that balance to somewhere else? How would we write that balance? You can go ahead and give it a shot. Pause the video and try to write out the logic, because the more that you try to write stuff out too, and you don't just copy what I'm doing, the better you're going to get at figuring this stuff out. That's taking it to the next level. And I always encourage you to go ahead and stop and try things on your own. Try them for yourself. Stop the video before I do something and see if you can do it first. Okay, so let's give it a shot. So balance of, what do we put in here? It's not the message sender, right? We're going to use our 2, so our value. Okay, and what are we going to do with this value? Well, we're actually going to increase plus equals underscore to our value. And now we're going to use the emit. We can run transfer and we get our from to value. And the final thing we want to do here is return the function as Boolean successful. So we're going to return as true. All right, so we have effectively written out the transfer function together, and hopefully you understand what all of these, hopefully you understand what the logic is here, and you're not just copying this down, right? It's the balance of the message sender. So the balance of coming from the message sender is going to be subtracted from the total value, right? This is when we're going to be transferring it. Now, what happens to the person receiving? Well, they're going to get the plus end of the value. So that contract address, or not person, but contract address gets the plus. So that's the 2, and that's the message sender, us, or the contract when I say us, all right? Like coming in from the Tether contract. And then we run our emit transfer, okay, which has our address indexed from to and our value, okay? So we run our from to value and we return it as true. And a final thing that we should actually do here is we should create a condition and make sure that what we're sending is always greater or equal than to the value, right? We don't want to be transferring if it's less than the value. So we have to run a require here. We can say balance of g.sender should be greater than or equal to. Okay, and let's add in some comments so we understand what's happening here. So require that the value is greater equal for transfer, right? Transfer the amount and subtract the balance. Add the balance to transferee. Or add the balance. We run the transfer and we return it true. Okay, so this is our transfer function. Now, the next function let's do together is going to be the, let's just stop there for a second because this is getting quite long. But in the next video, we're going to figure out the transfer from function as well as the approve function together for our smart contract. And that's it. Then we've actually created together our functional smart contract, which we can transfer to, from, and give the additional security for approval as well. Great work. I'll see you in the next video.